Open for any and all sharing, comments, questions around our topic or off our topic. Sure, Robin.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about wholesome and unwholesome speech. And so what I've noticed recently, well, actually over the last couple of years, actually, is that mostly with my husband, with Jeff, around the computer, that I tend to be more computer literate than him. And so he often asks for my help around something to do with his work or something else that he's not quite understanding. And my wholesome speech, the content is good, but the emotion behind it is frustration and shortness, and he's been calling me out on it, which is really good, because in the beginning I wasn't even aware that that was how I was coming across to him. I'm like, what do you
It gets communicated, doesn't it?
It gets communicated,
It gets
exactly.
communicated, especially
Yeah.
someone who knows you really well, like your husband.
Right, exactly. And so all the words were right, but the emotion behind it was so loaded and full of impatience and like, oh, really, you're asking me this again? And so now I've really been trying to be much more aware of it, and that when he calls me from the other room, I might go, and then I take a deep breath and I go, I have my little mantra now of be kind, be generous, be in love. And then I go in and I take a deep breath, and then the emotion is matching more of the content. And it's been a wonderful learning for me, because, as I said, when he first started calling me out on it, I really wasn't that aware that I was doing that. I mean, I was aware of my frustration, but I wasn't aware of how much I was coming across that way. And that was all he was hearing. He wasn't hearing the content of my words.
Absolutely.
He was hearing the emotion behind it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear, and a great illustration of, you start with the speech, you start with saying things that are not harsh, but you have to tune it. You have to tune that string.
I also wanted to say something about being a vegetarian, because I was a vegetarian for a long time. I'm not any longer. I don't eat red meat, but I found that when I was a full vegetarian, I was very ungrounded, and that I really needed to add, say, chicken and fish to my diet in order to ground more. And that because being grounded is so important. And as a vegetarian, I found that I was not grounded. So for me, that was a decision that I needed to make. But trying to be, more prayerful with a meal in front of me, and being grateful for the life that it's giving me.
Mm-hmm. Similar to you, I feel better if I have some meat in my diet. I've really struggled with blood sugar things and chronic fatigue and so forth. So I've been willing to, and I think some of that was, trying to eat without meat contributed to that to some degree. So it's not always best for one. But I work with it, and I try to buy meat from local farms, and that I know have lived a good life, and try to find my way with it. But so thank you for going there too. All right. Okay, Diane.
Topic is very timely for me. maybe about a year ago or 2 years ago, I listened to a podcast that introduced the term to me, moral injury. There's a lot of discussion about burnout in some professions, teachers, and certainly everyone blamed pandemic, but these issues were present before. And I'm in the practice of medicine, which has become increasingly corporate. So moral injury has become every day, going to work, trying to feel aligned morally, with values, and finding it increasingly difficult to do that. So much so that I'm going to retire sooner than I thought because it doesn't align anymore. So it's interesting. We had a typical meeting, maybe about 20, 22 doctors or so, and nurses, and at least as many administrative people doing I'm not sure what. Last Friday, and more slides about how we need to do things differently. And I just saw this struggle that everyone was having. And at the end of the meeting, I spoke and I talked about moral injury. And it just made me very sad seeing how all of these people in the room know what's best for them. It's similar with teachers. They know how to teach. They're just not allowed to do what they know. So it's funny because after a colleague came up to me and gave me a hug, and she said, "How did you do that?" Because I never speak up at these things. And I was thinking, I think it's because of my Tuesday sessions. I felt so at peace with all these eyes on me. I just felt so strongly about it. And I said, one young guy worked there 2 years. He's leaving. I mean, they're losing people. And the people suffering, of course, are patients. And I see it with teachers and many professions.
Many professions, yeah.
But I think the term is important. And it just makes me think of that related to today's discussion.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely related. Thank you for bringing us in on this and being willing to talk about it. It's huge. I've had a few physicians in my practice, and I know, many of the details of what you're talking about, of the direction of healthcare and what it's doing to doctors and patients both, and how to be in integrity. That we are beings that want to work in line with our values and our principles, and oftentimes it's not easy to find a way. And I certainly think your profession's one that I know has a lot of difficulties to it. So yes, you've just illustrated very well how integrity applies to livelihood. And what the solution is, you've come to yours. Retire early, but others may come to other things. I worked with somebody who sort of went on a mission to change the system in terms of a doctor burnout, and I'm afraid he burned out. That's kind of what happened. But he gave it a good shot, we'll say, within the corporation he worked with. So thank you. Thank you for speaking about this. The choices people make aren't easy around this. And I don't know how it all adds up in the end. But I have the sense that the more people who are kind of awakened, I mean, you pointed to this class, I laughed a bit. But I feel honored by that in a certain way, that I think, I would like to awaken people to the importance of their hearts and the integrity that is of the nature of their hearts, because our education system doesn't do a very good job of that. It doesn't talk directly to that. it might do some of it, I think, in early childhood, but it kind of disappears somewhere in our education. We don't expect adults to, or we could cordon it off in, just some particular ethical kind of discussion. In all the ethics of my own profession, I've never really seen it be addressed how to, like, what really are the ethics of working with an insurance company around getting care for someone? And, those sorts of questions, anyway, tend to skirt it a bit. And ethics becomes a little more abstract, but in the day-to-day, we're always making decisions that impact whether we feel good about ourselves in the work that we do. All right. Thank you. Anyone else that this topic is resonating with, or the previous ones? So, Mickey.
Yeah, I was thinking about this before the class, and I realized that I guess I just asked myself, what does wholesome mean for me? And it means, number one, fulfilling my commitments. That feels really important to me. And it also means not taking on more than I can do, which is very hard for me. But if you're attuned, I get excited. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I know I'm not going to be able to do, besides being stressed, I may not be able to do a good job of it. So strangely, wholesome feels like not taking on more than I can do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that into this, because that's certainly part of integrity. To keep your commitments, keep your word, what you say you'll do, and not take on more than you can do. And if I can just add another thing, to be kind to yourself in terms of what you take on too. Let it be right-sized. Let it be attuned to your well-being. It is the dilemma of responsible people sometimes, that they take on too much. They feel, like someone needs to do this. And thank goodness those responsible people exist. I'm often grateful for people who serve on boards, people who serve on school committees, who are willing to be select people for their towns. I see the kinds of hours they do and the kinds of work they do, and I'm very grateful that they do that. And I do think it's in some people's nature. Some people are called to take on those sorts of roles, but they take on a burden with them, I do believe. And bless them.
And another aspect of being attuned and integrity to me is it has something to do with recognizing my age and aging. So it's very, very hard, I'll tell you, as you're aging. Some people here may know, to realize what you can and maybe what you really can't do.
Yes.
Very, very hard. And, like people, I'm not there yet, but people who won't stop driving when they really should stop driving.
Right.
I'm not there, thank goodness, but, I'm very aware of some things getting more difficult and taking on, I can't do as many different things as I used to do. So all of that kind of thing actually just now strikes me as part of integrity.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard too. I don't.
It's
Anyway.
hard. Yeah, because they all represent losses, perhaps even to our autonomy, driving being one really big one. I watched my mother-in-law struggle with that really. But short of that, sometimes I can foresee where one of them that I'm going to have has to do with gardening. My body is getting older and I suffer when I work too hard. And there's a lot of things that aren't great for your back. I don't have a great back, and there's a lot of things that are kind of backbreaking about having a vegetable garden, and it's fine right now, but I can see the future that I'll need to do less and less, and there'll be a point at which I'll stop, and it will be very hard. So thank you, Mickey. This is the part of the nature of aging. Attuned to aging. This is just, I'm not sure where my mind went to this, but I think of the whole experience of COVID has brought out the need for attunement, attunement to others, their health, their safety, what that requires, what we ourselves require not to go absolutely nuts, stuck inside or whatever. There were all sorts of moments there where attunement was needed.
Yeah, I'm torn between two things. One is I'm doing my annual retreat at IMS's Forest Refuge in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay. Good for you.
Oh, I can't wait. 9 days at the Forest Refuge. And I feel like I asked you this last year at the same time, but I confess I don't remember what you said.
I don't remember what I said either.
Oh, good.
We'll see.
It'll all be new.
We'll see. Maybe it'll all come back.
I noticed that I have a part. I just appreciate the preciousness of the time to completely unplug and do some deep practice. And I feel the energy of the, whatever it is, 20 something years of continuous practice in that meditation hall. People who've been on retreat for 12 months, and it's just very still and precious. So there's a part that has, I don't know if it's an agenda that sort of wants to know what you think about taking a topic like integrity or mudita, generosity, something, and kind of deeply exploring it along with just opening to what is, watching the mind and settling into stillness and just being, but using the time for some, deepening of something like that. I just wondered what your thoughts were.
Well, I think it sounds like a great idea, really, to keep that in mind, or have a little sign on your mirror or something like that. It's all about mindfulness. It's all about directing mindfulness to all the different aspects of one's lived experience. And typically on a retreat, if it's led by a teacher, there's probably a teacher at the Forest Refuge, but it's not. People join and end at various times, as you know. So there isn't like a progressive kind of teaching the way there can be on retreats at Insight Meditation Society, where everybody starts at the same time. Mm-hmm. And one of the roles that a teacher has is to direct people's attention in a kind of a systematic way, to open it up to different aspects and suggest things that people pay attention to. So when you're in the forest refuge and you don't have that kind of instruction from outside, you can provide it from inside.
Mhm.
And I certainly think integrity would lead you some very deep and interesting places,
Mhm.
to watch that. Of course, you'll be in silence, I assume.
Yeah.
But we're always talking to ourselves, and we're talking to imaginary others in our heads. It's kind of amazing. And so the speech is all over the place, even on a silent retreat. There's speech going on. And you can notice how you talk to yourself, or who you end up debating in your mind, or whatever goes on there. There's speech happening, and of course the right action ones, protect the bug, don't kill the bugs, and the usual things that people are told on retreats. But maybe also kind of like, in terms of what I was talking here with livelihood, is to stay in touch with your inner promptings and discern between inner promptings that are really, for lack of better words, the call of the spirit, and cravings, where I just want to make myself more comfortable. I just want to have this pleasure again. I want to go out and walk in the woods because I like walking in the woods, and I want to see that such and such. That's subtle levels of craving. Whereas, to actually tune into what am I called to do right now? When I get on retreat, I have this kind of, there's a side of me that can be mechanical, and I think it's from very early training on Buddhist retreats. Sit and walk and sit and walk and sit. Well, keep the schedule. And there's a value to that, because it kind of takes away your ability to make everything according to your cravings, right? But it also removes you from the responsibility of tuning in to what's needed right now. Is it really one more sitting? Is that really what's needed right now?
Mhm.
And whereas it might be that you need to give space to something that's come up inside of you, and God forbid, think about it.
Mhm.
That actually might be a tuned practice to give something. I would sometimes notice some grief like peeking out under there from something, and there's such a tendency that I have to avoid that.
Mhm.
And so when something about grief would come up, I kind of learned that it was really helpful to give that some space. Let my mind really go there, think about that, and feel it, and stop trying to concentrate the mind on the breath, or something,
Mhm.
something like that, when I could actually notice the breath around the grief, the way that I wasn't quite taking a full breath, and, begin to integrate that. So that's my sense of, an attuned way to do a retreat is to tune into, how was I putting it, the call of the spirit, not just cravings.
Mhm. Thank you.
Comfort and pleasure are the cravings,
Absolutely.
Not that there's anything wrong with them. I've been on such pleasureful walks around there, and the woods are lovely. But, when you're seeking that, when you're trying to get another hit of something, that's craving.
Mhm.
But when you're making a wise choice to open up to something and to not narrow the mind at that point, not seek a deeper kind of like concentration, but actually open things up and allow, that's really helpful. So that's what occurs to me, Bryony.
Thank you. That's really
All right.
helpful.
Have a great retreat.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the stillness. So we're at our time here. All right, go forth. Be attuned or not, and notice you're not. And we'll talk next week.